let's just sew whatever. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be making the Convention Raider bag by Fierce Kitten Studios. This bag is so freaking cute. It has a belt strap basically here and then a leg strap. The leg strap can be adjustable, but I just cut mine to 19 inches and added the snap hooks. Sorry, I was listening to TV in my earbuds. But it's so cute. It's got a large zippered section at the top. I will say it's a little tight to get into, but it's not too bad. I think it's just the materials that I used. It's got a zipper pocket on this front flap. Super cute. And then it has a large cargo pocket basically on the front there. So, and then I added 2 zippers. The pattern does state that it's a little too much for vinyl, but I used a very thin vinyl for my punk broidery, so I didn't really have any issues. I guess I could unhook it so you guys can see. Here's the back. And I used a cotton lycra with Woven Fuse 2, and I did add foam. So here's the full shape of the bag. It's got 1/2 inch D-rings down at the bottom, 1 inch at the top. Again, here's that gusseted cargo pocket. I decided to add 2 zippers up here just to make it easier to get in and out of. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed making this pattern. This was my very first time, and honestly, I didn't read over the pattern that much before I started, so my bad. This took way longer than it probably would if you were making it yourself, but hey, that's okay. We can make it together. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're gonna start following the pattern pretty close to the instructions. So I am starting with my belt connectors. This is for the top. This is a 1 inch wide when finished. And then you want to make sure there are no raw edges. So I've got my double-sided tape in the center, folding raw edges into the center. And then I'll grab another piece of double-sided tape. Add that right kind of close to the bottom. And then slide my D-ring on. Oh, peel my tape off. And then I like to make sure that my D-ring comes down a little bit lower so there's room for a rivet to make it really strong. So then I'm just going to clip this and set it aside. And then we're going to work on the lower belt connectors, which are the 1/2 inch D-rings. You can also add a piece of double-sided tape to this piece now, because we are going to need it to stick on to the piece. So this is the back side out of that little piece of double-sided tape. So for this here, again, this is 1/2 inch wide when finished. So I'm keeping it clipped together the whole way, or taped together, I should say. And then folding into the center. And the tape that I'm using is 1/2 inch wide double-sided tape. You can find the link for that below in the description. But then I can cut this in half and then slide D-rings through. So if you are using a woven fabric for these connectors, you'll want to follow the instructions in the pattern and cut it to twice the size or the width that you'd need. And then we're going to stitch in a U shape, leaving this raw end open. So it's not quite the same as what we did for the top connectors. So there's that top stitched. If your machine can't necessarily sew through this, or you don't want to, you could also just add a rivet. Okay, so there are the D-rings finished. Okay, so the next thing we are working on is the flap of the exterior of the bag. So we're working with the lining first, and I've got it wrong side up. Oh, drop my washer. So I'm lining up my snap washer. The center circle is where I'm lining up and creating two parallel lines so I know where to attach my snap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke through these parallel lines, and then I'm going to add Decoville light to the back of it. And I'm just going to press this with a little bit of steam really quick. So I've got that attached, so now I can attach the snap. And I was able to just poke through the Decoville light. Or this is heavy actually. And then either way, you can bend your snap outward or inward. It really just depends. And then you can add some some duct tape for extra security. Where did my scissors go? Right there. Okay. So there's our back side of the flap. Okay, so now we're taking the interlaced. All right, so just to talk about my materials really quick, I'm using a knit cotton lycra fabric with woven fuse 2 on the back, and you can see that eliminates any stretch and makes it just a really thick piece. So I did not fuse my fleece to this piece. I'm gonna fuse it after I attach my pocket. I'm just gonna kind of baste it to give the flap some extra loftiness. So really quick, I'm going to take the front, that pocket piece, and trace out my zipper pocket. Okay, so it looks like the pocket is 3.5 inches from the top. So I'm gonna fold this in half. And actually I'm gonna mark 2.5 from the top and just make a tiny little mark, just so I know, because what I want to do is sketch on the back of my pocket lining, flat pocket lining, yes. Because what I want to do is trace my box to sew around on this piece to make it a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to start that 1 inch from the top, and this is a 4.5 inch wide box. Okay, 1 inch from the top. So 1, 2 1/4, 1, 2 1/4 from the center. And then we'll come down 1/2 inch. And again, 1, 2 1/4, 1, 2 1/4. Okay. So there is that little box. And then I can line up I made that little tiny mark, and I'm lining up the top of the pocket with that, because that 1 inch plus that 2 1/4 or 2.5 makes up for the 3.5. And then I'm clipping it in place. So there's our zippered pocket right sides are together. And again, I did not attach my fleece yet. Okay. So then I'm going to switch to a smaller stitch length of 4. I'm going to start at one end and back stitch. Go forward, back stitch. And then I like to do just 2 parallel lines, but you can sew that box if you prefer. And then there is some excess on either side of that waterproof canvas that I'm using for the lining, but you can just trim the excess away. Oh, I'm so rusty. I haven't sewn in so long. Okay. Okay. So then I snipped through that. I'm going to flip it right side out and then press it gently with my iron using lots of steam. And then we'll add our zipper. I am using a number 5 nylon coil zipper with a zipper pull from my website. And we're going to sew that in place. I did press that zipper to make sure that everything sits nicely. I did make it longer than necessary since it's zipper by the yard. You don't want to cut it too small. Then you can use glue, double-sided tape, whatever you need to hold it in place. I made my zipper longer so that I wouldn't have to deal with that pull being in the way, but you want to make sure that you bring it in before you close up the other side of the box. And then if you need to, you can extend your stitch length again. Okay, so I'm getting towards that last side of the zipper pocket, so I want to make sure I push my zipper pull in. And then we want to add the back side of the zipper pocket. I probably just sewed it on the wrong way. That's okay. So I think it should have been a little bit more like that. The longer side this way, the shorter side this way, but I'm only losing like an inch or so. It's not a big deal. And then you're going to want to sew through all 4 sides to close it up. So what I'm going to do to make sure everything fits nicely is I've got my flap facing up, and I'm just going to fold my exterior fabric out of the way. And so pretty much as close to that zipper as possible. And as I get to the bottom, I'm going to pivot, flip, and then again kind of eyeball here, and then sew across the top. And then you can trim down all of that excess fabric. And if you're worried that some of your stitching may come loose, you can sew 2 lines that are like 1/8 of an inch away from each other around that. But I think it should be okay because we're also going to sew the flap together and all that. So I have no doubt it will be fine. Okay. So now it's all trimmed down. There it is from the back side. It's so cute. I love it. Okay, so then we're going to finish the flap. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just sandwich this all together. So I'm not actually fusing that fleece. I'm just going to kind of baste it. If you're using a thicker material or a thicker lining, you could probably omit the fleece. But I do like the idea of the loftiness it's going to add and the padding it'll add. So there's that, and you'll want to do right sides together. Lining it up. And you'll just sew in a U shape, keeping the top open. And it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Keeping my stitch length at like 4.5. And I'm just going to follow the edge of my foot because that's about a 1/4 inch. And then when I press the flap, it'll kind of help to fuse that fleece. In case you're thinking like, oh, I'm not fusing the fleece. That's not good. It'll be okay. I am going to trim those corners, those curves just a little bit. You could choose to use pinking shears or just kind of snip around that curve. But I'm just going to trim it down. Oh, if you're going to add a nameplate, the front flap is probably the best place to add it as well. That'd be cute. Ah, it's so adorable. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to press this using a lot of steam only on the top, maybe a little bit on the lining, and then I'm going to use Wonder clips around the outside edge to hold it together, and then we'll top stitch it. Okay. Yes, so we're just going to sew around all of that. All right. Now I'm going to change my stitch length to a 5. Starting at the top, I'm going to back stitch just a little bit and then carry on. And then I'm getting close to the top, so I'm back stitching, and then I'm just going to sew straight across. Okay, so there's what it looks like from the back. There's the front. So I'm just going to kind of trim down that fleece from the top. Make sure that's straight. And then we can move on to the main front top zippered pocket. Oh, it's so cute. Okay, so I've got my main top piece A, and I'm gonna fold that in half. And then I've got my main pocket piece, and this one is very long, so we're gonna measure 7 inches across the top short edge. So let's see here. And this is going to be 1.25 inches or so from the top edge. So we'll keep that in mind when we're placing this. I'm gonna measure the box about 1.25 inches from the top edge of this main zipper pocket. I'm using this zipper template from Tops and Bobbins. This is not required. It's just a 7-inch zipper pocket, and it makes it a little bit easier to just mindlessly attach it. So I'm gonna line up center folds. You can even snip it if you want. This woven fuse too, like, it won't crease, so it's almost hard to mark the center. Okay, so just to show you guys what I mean, so I made the box on this zipper pocket 1.25 inches from the top, and that's exactly where that box needs to be on the main panel. So then we can just stitch around that box and add our zipper. Right sides are together, and we'll get started. Make your stitch length about a 4 or smaller if you're using a domestic. Back stitch. And then we're going to cut that open. Using my precision snips to get really close to those corners. Just to show you guys how close we get with those precision snips. And then I'm going to turn it through and press using lots of steam on the iron. Okay, so now we're going to attach the zipper. Again, this is just like what we did with the flap, except this is on piece A. Lining it up. This time I did not make my zipper so long that I could keep the zipper head off, so I'll just be careful stitching around it all. And I can't remember if I mentioned it already, but I did not add the fleece to this piece. Again, because I'm using a knit fabric and that woven fuse too, it's already so thick that adding the fleece would just make it super thick. So if you're using a regular quilting cotton for yours, the fleece would be very nice, but will make your top stitch around that zipper opening a little tough. May make, not will. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So then we can grab the back side, line that all up. And for these, we will be closing it up. So what I'm gonna do is sew along the bottom, pivot, come around the top, and I will want to cut off my excess lining of this pocket at the top especially, so that it doesn't make our seam allowances bulkier. So this up here, I'm going to trim that off. Okay. So there is our front panel A, ready to go. All right, we've got pieces F, G, and H for both the lining and the exterior. And we're going to fold them in half and make tiny little snips in the centers, or you can also use a marking pencil to mark it. Your call. But like I said, I'm just taking my snips and making itty bitty little snips to find the center. Hopefully, you can probably barely see them. And I do have mine labeled zippered front, zippered back. They're very close to size, but the little bit longer one is the back. Wider. It's not longer, it's wider. And H. You could also use like micro tip scissors, or like we said, marking pencils. I am using a vinyl for mine, but this is from My Punk Broidery and it's quite thin. Nothing too bulky or thick, so make sure you avoid that if possible. So let's add the female magnet piece on exterior piece E, which is this. So again, I'm going to kind of mimic what I did on the other side of the bag. So we've got that marked, and then I'm going to attach my Deckerville Heavy and then attach the snap. So just a little bit of steam. You can use a pressing cloth. Okay. And then for this piece, again, we can add that duct tape to help keep it in place. And then we're going to grab our 15-inch zipper and get started on our zipper panel. So I wanted to, I messed up the order of this, but I wanted to baste on this fleece, just so I'm following the pattern pretty close to the instructions. So I'm just laying it in place I'm gonna stitch around the outer edge. And then I'll trim down the excess fleece. I always hate like fussy cutting a piece if I've already fussy cut one, if that makes sense. I mean, not fussy cut, but and of course I'm not stitching through the bottom because then we would close up that zippered pocket. We don't want to do that. All right. So that's all basted in place. And then trimming that down. So there's that piece finished. Now we can move on to the other part. Okay, so take the 15-inch zipper, lay it right side up, take the exterior front zipper pocket piece, yes, and lay it right side down on the zipper. And I did cut my zipper just a little bit longer so that I could keep the zipper pull out of the way. So there's that. You can use glue if you want to kind of baste it, but then you can, we will go ahead and do that. We'll just baste stitch. Baste stitch that in place about 1/8 of an inch from the outer edge. This will help make sure nothing moves around. You could also choose to use glue or 1/8 of an inch basting tape, something like that. Okay. And then we'll take the lining side as well. Okay. So basically you want to encase the zipper right sides together. So wrong sides will be facing up and your zipper is in between all of that. Okay. So then I'm gonna sew with the right side still facing up and then come in at 1/4 of an inch. Yep, there we go. And then we're going to press the lining and the exterior and top stitch. I am going to press it from the lining side using steam so that everything stays in place nicely. Trimming my excess thread down. And then we are going to attach the other side of our zipper panel, which becomes the back. Making sure that you're lining it up with the other edge of the zipper front. I'll show you what I mean. So you want these to meet here and there. So you can base that in place. I'll go ahead and just add my other zipper piece using more clips. Maybe I'll regret it, maybe I won't. We'll find out. So 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Pressing from the lining side and top stitching through both layers. Okay, so the top of our zipper panel is ready to go. Ooh. Editing Lauren here. At this point, you should not trim those two pieces to match, okay? Do not do it. It's not supposed to be trimmed down. I misread the instructions. It seemed to work okay, but don't do it, okay? Promise me now. Promise me you're not gonna do it that way. Okay, so now in this piece, she mentions that H may be a little bit shorter than your gusset, so you trim it down. She left a little bit of extra room for, you know, just in case. So I'm going to cut off that extra. A little bit there. And then if you guys have ever made the mini backpack with me, this is very similar to how that is sewn. So we're going to leave, we're only going to sew through at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, only through the exterior. And then we're going to backstitch when we get to that zipper and move our lining fabric out of the way. Backstitch at the zipper and the outer edge, but we're not sewing through the lining. So you can see there's our little jump thread, and then we're just going to snip it and repeat that for the lining. But let's get the exterior done first. Lay that flat. And again, it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Backstitch at the zipper, lift up, backstitch, and then trim your jump stitch. Laying the lining face down with the lining. I'm going to clip through only the lining fabrics and flip it. And lift up. Fold your exterior fabric out of the way. And trim your jump stitch. Okay. And then we'll want to flip this right sides out, basically. So you can see here we've got our gusset ready. Although it didn't make sense to mark the centers of that first, because then we turned it down, it's not the centers anymore. Okay. Okay, so now it says we should trim our excess seam allowance only where we stitched through. So only where we've sewn through are we trimming it down. I am leaving my zipper long. Well, I guess I can't. Get the rest in the trash. Okay, so next we need to grab, so there's our gusset. Next we need to grab our exterior front pocket. And we want to make sure we fold it in half to find the center. You can also use your pattern piece markings, which I think is awesome that she's included those little markings. And I decided to add 2 zipper pulls to my gusset so that it wouldn't matter which side you wanted to close it to. So it can unzip with both, or you can just have it to one side or the other side, whichever you prefer. Be careful not to unzip your zipper too much because that is unsewn at the moment. Okay, so I'm taking my actual centers at the top. Zipper front is shorter or longer? Hold please. Zipper front is the shorter side. So we'll take that first. And the top of your zipper pocket is the opposite of where the snap is. So we're going to slowly clip around the edges, making sure your lining is completely out of the way. And then what I'm doing to make sure everything lines up nicely is I'm kind of pinching the corners and flattening out one side, and I'm going to clip where my zipper gusset meets piece H, and clipping there first, and then working out the other curves. And then we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, just kind of evening out where that goes. And it looks like it's lining up about 4 inches from the bottom, just to give you guys a little note. I'm always like, is this right? Is this right? Awesome. So everything fits really nicely together. I love that. And then we're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance with the gusset facing up, just all the way around the outside edge, going nice and slow. I'm gonna start at the, like, underneath the zipper gusset, just so I can start easy and then work into a harder section. Get used to the curves that we're sewing. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I love how, like, she's very avidly let you know what the seam allowances are for each part. I'm gonna backstitch over this gusset as I'm starting to go towards the top. Making sure to move your lining out of the way. Again, back stitching. So I reach that gusset sew stitch line. Okay, so we've sewn all the way around that. And then we're going to do the lining piece E here. Okay, so the pattern says we want to exterior facing down, well, exterior wrong side on the table. It's facing up. Flip the lining's bottom gusset up so that it is separate and free from the exterior bottom. Okay. The turning hole will end up being the area between the lining and exterior gusset piece exposed. Okay. Like here, I'm guessing. Yeah. Okay. Push the exterior gusset down into the pocket against the exterior panel that is laying on the table. Okay. Whew, sorry, I had to sneeze. Okay, so we're basically flipping the front side of the zipper gusset up. So basically the opposite of what we've just sewn. And we're going to line up the center snips and sew that down. And then if you wanted to, you could use a tiny, tiny, tiny bit wider of a seam allowance for the lining, but you probably don't have to. The centers. That's the center. Okay. So then we're going to lay this face up and kind of move our exterior out of the way as we go around. You could probably trim this down a little bit if you wanted to. but I'm gonna wait just because it may come in handy later. We may need that extra seam allowance. Okay, back stitch. I am using a stitch length of 4.5. You can use a little bit smaller if you want. And then just make sure that you're only sewing through your lining fabrics. Corner's getting a little tight for me. Could be that my zipper pull is there and in the way. I don't know. Can't really feel it. And then I will trim down the lining just a little bit, just because something got messed up. Okay. Make sure you sewed through everything. There's no raw edges. Okay. Flip the assembled pocket so that it is wrong side out. Okay, so I think we're going to sew through the lining and the exterior. Okay. Yes. So again, she says it's optional, but basically you're going to be sewing around this. Yeah. Okay. And you want to be sewing through both seam allowances, but I think I'm going to skip this step only because I used waterproof canvas, so that's going to hold a lot of shape. It's not sagging, you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that step. Okay. So I'm just trimming down my extra little bits here. And then we're going to So now we're going to sew our zipper panel closed right here. So we're going to top stitch from here to here. Okay. So I'm actually going to do this from the lining side, I think, because it's a little bit easier to get to. So back stitching at the start and back stitching at the end. Well, maybe don't do it from their lining side because they didn't line up. That's okay, it's for me. I'll do it from the exterior this time. Okay, one worked. Okay, great. And then top stitching that is very important so that you don't leave your zipper ends open. Otherwise, when you unzip it, it might slip through that opening there, and that would not be good. So here's our pocket, almost ready to go. It says to finish off the pocket, place the back raw pocket zipper and gusset pieces wrong sides together and line up the edges so that they match, and then zigzag them together. I don't have a zigzag machine, so you can also serge it or just baste it. And it says they're going to be tucked under and enclosed. Okay. So then I'm going to line it up. Just baste it all together, 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch from the outer edge. My lining is a little bit bigger for some reason on the bottom of this gusset. I don't know why. Okay. So I'm going to clip it together just because anxiety says I must. There we go. That's better. Okay. So now I can baste it all together. So that's good. Now we'll keep on keeping on. So now it says I want to fold this over about 1/4 of an inch. You can use probably double-sided tape to kind of help you fold over 1/4 of an inch. It'll help you, like, it'll hold that in place. And then you'll want to kind of clip it in place, or not clip it, but you can pin it in place according to the guide. But I honestly might just start with the centers and then work my way through it. Just double check where the center is. Okay. And you can, you know what, I might use double-sided tape at those center marks, just this 1/4 inch wide, to help me keep those where they need to be. You could probably use glue and let it sit a little while, glue it in place, and then stitch through if your machine can handle something like that. But I'm just taking these little pieces, make sure they're straight. And then I'm just gonna fold this so I know where the side goes. Yeah. Yeah, that'll work. I like it. Okay. And you want to make sure that the tape is within the lines, not on the outside. So I've just got those a little bit there to kind of help me. And then the corners I can kind of work through. It's not gonna look great that way, but I'm lazy. I'm lazy. Okay, so make sure center is lined up, center. And I think keeping it unzipped is gonna be easier than keeping it zipped, just so I can move things a little bit easier without shifting the base around, but who knows? Okay, so there's my center. There we go. That looks good. Looks good. Yeah. And then I can use this double-sided tape along the side gusset. Hold that in place. And then the other side gusset. Looks good. So here's what we're looking at. I mean, it doesn't look great right now, but we got to top stitch around. So we'll get started. I'm probably going to start over here and work my way slowly around. You could also start at the top. Top might be better. Get more in place, especially in those areas that we are confident we have it correctly placed. So my stitch length is 4.5. I'm going to slowly unclip as I go. And help it keep its shape. I think I'm happy with this so far. I think. Okay. Back at the top. Yeah. Oh, I think this looks fine. Kind of reshape it. Zip it up. Can't see any raw edges inside. And you've got this great big pocket. I like it. Okay, so now we're going to assemble the front main panels. Take the assembled flap, right side up, clip or pin the center along the top edge of the main front bottom piece. Line it up centered. So I'm marking the center of the flap to line up with the center of this bottom piece, just to make sure, and then I'll clip my snap in place and baste it. Awesome. Ah! I love it. I'm gonna baste it just because it's a lot of layers and I don't want it to shift. Okay, so now we're going to take main front top piece A and turn it upside down. I have my center marked, but this is going to go basically like that on the piece, and you're going to want to make sure you're moving your pocket out of the way. And then we'll top stitch through that. And this is 1/2 inch seam allowance. Do not trim down the seam. Goodbye forever clip. So because I added that fleece after the pocket, I'm gonna add a little snip at the pocket, at the fleece, that's about 1/2 inch so that it sits flat. Hopefully you can see there. So the fleece is just here and here, but that's okay. And again, this is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure your pocket is flipped out of the way. You don't want to sew through it because then you've lost your pocket. You don't want to do that. I'm going to back stitch over where the flap connects and then just a few other little points. Nothing too serious, just a couple little back and forth so that it has some extra durability. And then we're going to top stitch through it. And again, we're top stitching on the exterior fabric, but move your pocket out of the way. Move it out of the way. You don't want to sew through it. Okay. Now we're going to grab the thigh belt connectors that we made earlier and place them centered along the bottom extended edges, angled outward, D-rings to the inside. So use piece B as your guide. So they'll sit like that. Here and here. And then we're going to baste them in place so they don't shift on us. Okay. So I did not interface the foam to my back piece, so I'm gonna baste it in place really quick, and then we'll finish up the bag. And then probably gonna need to change my oven. So for the thigh belt, I'm actually going to be using 3/4 inch wide, and then for the top, I'm going to use 1 inch wide webbing, because that's what I had on hand. But I like the idea of the 1/2 inch, because then it won't be so like thick on your leg and irritating in a way. Okay, so this is the back of my panel. I decided I wanted to be nice and soft, so this is that cotton lycra as well. We're gonna put right sides together. Make sure your hardware is facing in. And the birthing hole is gonna be the bottom of here, is where we're gonna turn the bag through. I think that's cool. You could probably skip adding foam if you wanted to and add a zippered pocket back there to birth through, but that might get uncomfortable on your leg too. It's almost like making a stuffed animal. I don't think you want to like baste down that zippered pocket or anything. I accidentally have it clipped, but I think you'd probably want to leave that free. Okay, so then again, we're going to leave as much of the bottom unsewn as possible and sew around at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Bobbin would have made it, but I'd rather not risk it. So 4.5 inch, not 4.5 inch, 4.5 stitch length. And let's do it. Start at the bottom. I'm starting right after that curve, or like right where that curve starts. Back stitching. Then sewing along. I'm going to back stitch again just 1 or 2 times over our thigh belt connector, and then following around the edge. You're going to have to kind of compress things with that big old pocket. And then make sure your other pocket is, oh wait, no, never mind, I see. I was like, make sure this is out of the way. Well, it is out of the way. Okay, and then I'm reaching that other connector and I'm gonna sew just a little ways past it so that we've got the largest opening at the bottom possible. Okay, and then it says trim your seam allowance down to 1/4 inch. I am not going to trim the seam allowance down where I stitched those thigh connectors. I don't want to weaken that point, but I will trim everything else, especially since they're curves. I'll try anyway. So then we're going to flip it through. Okay. Probably want to get that pocket bit out first. Make sure you don't rip anything. Yeah, grab that flap. Gently, of course. Yeah, you would not want to use any thick vinyl to make this. There is that warning in the pattern, but just to reiterate at the end of making it. I'm going to press my hand into those corners to make sure those curves look nice and cute. And then I'm going to kind of start clipping around the outer edge so when I top stitch, it is pretty thick, but that's again because I use this knit fabric and that fleece and the foam. So I'd say that if you're using a knit fabric, you could probably do without the fleece. Probably a good idea. Push out this corner here. Okay, so here is where we left it open. You're going to want to tuck that in. You could probably use some double-sided tape to help you if you're finding it difficult to keep everything together. Should be okay though. Fleece is weird feeling there. Oh, I didn't use fleece. Ah, okay, so now before we top stitch, she mentions you want to unzip your zipper pocket and make sure that your zipper is laying flat, because mine is not. Because it may even go in to top stitching. Down here or something. Let me see. Yeah. It feels feels like. Okay. Okay, I feel it now. Yeah, along the bottom, it may be caught in that top stitching. Cool. It's so cute. Can't handle it. Okay, there we go. Okay, did it take me long enough to clip? Oh, but it's so cute. Okay, so now we're gonna top stitch all the way around and then add our D-rings and belts. So probably you should start at the bottom. I'm gonna start over that connector. Back stitch. My stitch length is still set to 4.5, especially since we're closing up a seam. You don't want to do too long, risk it coming undone, and then somebody have a hole in their bag. So I'm back stitching just a couple places, back stitching a little bit over that connector. Okay, so then you're going to use the pattern placement piece provided for these. And that is, yeah, the pattern piece A. And basically it's just gonna get clipped or kind of sewn through all the layers, or you can just rivet it. I'm probably only going to sew just because I don't want the cold rivets on my leg, just in case. Oh, sorry, Nook. Covering up his face. So like that. And then I'll do a box stitch to secure it. And you can either do 2 X's or just 1 dash. I'll just do the 1 across. It's just for me. I don't mind. And even if you wanted to, you could still add a rivet there and a rivet there or something. And I believe this fabric is from Retro Stitch Custom Fabrics. I'm not 100% sure, but I remember. I know I bought it in a buy sell trade group because I was like, oh, I need it. So that is the main construction of the bag finished. It is so cute, I could cry, and I probably will. So it's got this big open pocket here that's like basically the full size of the bag. She has it shown with a Nintendo Switch inside, which I may do with mine. But I'm also going to be using this at C2E2 this weekend, which will be after this is posted because the pattern isn't live yet. But I'm going to use it to like hold money and my phone and card readers and stuff. So this little pocket right here is the cutest. And then it's got this big open section where you could again put a phone. You could even like add a slip pocket here or some like fold over elastic section so you could put pens in there. Super cute. I love it. Okay, let's get those other pieces ready to go. So they're basically just crossbody straps. I mean, mine are exactly. Ooh, goodbye. I'm gonna actually like. Whoops, sorry. So it's supposed to go kind of like this. So I was thinking I have this one piece here. It may work with just 2 snap hooks. Yeah, I think it will. So this, I'm just going to add 2 snap hooks instead of a slide adjuster. And this is 19 inches from end to end. So I'm going to take my 3/4 inch snap hooks. And fold the edges under. Twice. Just really small. You could add just a rivet if you wanted to. I'm going to add just 2 lines of stitching. Again, this is for me. And I'm not going to be picky. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then make sure that your raw ends are both on the same side. Well, not raw, but your folded over end. So yeah, this gets clipped along the bottom there, and then we'll make the 1 inch strap for around the waist. So I just need my 1 inch slide adjuster and 2 1 inch snap hooks. All right, so we're gonna start with attaching our slide adjuster. We're just gonna fold one end through and back under. And then I'm going to add 2 lines of stitching. And slide one snap hook through. Slide that over the top, slide that to the other side. And then we'll attach the remaining snap hook after I cut off, no, I'll leave it long. Who knows, maybe I'll get fatter. But I can adjust it nice and small. But then it can fit multiple people as well. Unless you're really skinny. That's okay. All right, so I folded the raw edge under, and I'm just doing a box stitch through. Okay. So now it's done. And I need chapstick. Okay. So, and this one gets hooked here and here. So it goes around your waist and around your leg at the bottom so that it doesn't like flap around. You honestly probably could wear it just around your waist, but again, kind of flap around a bit. This pattern is by Fierce Kitten Studios, my friend Georgia. She did an amazing job. I haven't seen anything very similar to this that I know of. But yeah, thank you so much for letting me make it. Be sure to subscribe if you're not already, and thanks for watching.